New Year's Eve is probably not anybody's favorite holiday. There aren't any presents, not really any songs except for Auld Lang Syne, which no one can really remember the lyrics to, and while Christmas and all the other major holidays often require a fair amount of shopping and preparation, New Year's Eve is over in a flash. But what many people don't realize is that New Year's Eve is an ancient celebration, with a very diverse and interesting history that's worth talking about. Also, the holiday's lack of religious affiliation means that I don't have to worry about any negative comments about how I'm imposing pagan traditions onto what many people perceive to be a non-pagan holiday, which is always a plus. The first New Year's celebration can be traced back to ancient Babylon, some 4,000 years ago, where it was believed that the vernal equinox, a day in late March when night and day are equal in length, hailed the beginning of the new year. A silver jade from the editing room here, I actually did some more research on the vernal equinox and found out that it occurs on a different date depending on which hemisphere you're in. If you're in the northern hemisphere, it occurs on March 20th or 21st, and if you're in the southern hemisphere, on September 22nd or 23rd. So yeah, that was my bad, sorry. In addition to celebrating the coming year, this 11-day-long festival, known as Akatu, was also a time of deep spiritual significance, when it was believed that the world was renewed. The vernal equinox also marked the beginning of the new year for the ancient Romans, though this changed in 46 BC, with the creation of the Julian calendar by, Julius Caesar, who established January 1st as the start of the new year, largely because the month's namesake, Janus, was the god of beginnings, often depicted with two faces, one looking forward into the future and the other focused on the past, a very fitting mascot for the new year. New Year's celebrations shifted back to March during the Middle Ages, this time made to align with the Feast of Annunciation on March 25th. But after the creation of the Gregorian calendar in 1582 by Pope Gregory XIII, January 1st was re-established as New Year's Day, and has remained so ever since, at least for those of us that use the Gregorian calendar. Probably one of the best known Western New Year's traditions has to be the singing of Auld Lang Syne at the stroke of midnight. Auld Lang Syne, which literally translated means old long times, but can be interpreted to mean for old time's sake, was first recorded by Robert Burns in 1788, who claimed that it was derived from an old Scottish folk song handed down to him by an elderly gentleman, possibly someone he met at the pub. The song, along with other traditional Scottish ballads, was later incorporated as part of the Scottish New Year's festivities, also referred to as Hogmanay. During the 19th century, people in Scotland would often gather together in a public place, typically a bell tower, to ring in the new year. Ha, get it? These festivities would last until midnight, when all the revelers would gather together and sing traditional Scottish songs, with Auld Lang Syne being a popular choice. This tradition eventually led to the creation of bell-ringing programs, where, thanks to the invention of the radio, the sound of the New Year's Eve bells could be broadcast to people in their homes. These programs, which later crossed the pond, becoming a popular part of New Year's celebrations in America, would also frequently include traditional Scottish and English songs, such as Auld Lang Syne, further contributing to the song's association with the holiday. This leads us to the events of 1929, when Guy Lombardo and his band, the Royal Canadians, performed Auld Lang Syne during a New Year's Eve broadcast at the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. While the song and its association with the holiday had definitely already entered the public consciousness by this time, this event seems to have been what solidified Auld Lang Syne as the primary New Year's Eve song. The New Year's Eve kiss, the tradition where couples kiss at the stroke of midnight, seems to be an ancient practice with a very uncertain origin. While kissing, good luck, and holidays are all elements that tend to coincide in cultures across history, most sources trace the origins of the New Year's Eve kiss to two ancient festivals: the Roman celebration of Saturnalia a week-long festival dedicated to the god Saturn and held during the winter solstice, and Hogmanay, the traditional Scottish New Year's festival. While Saturnalia's link to this tradition seems to be very loosely based on the fact that it was a time of drunken debauchery and therefore probably involved kissing in some capacity, during the celebration of Hogmanay, it was actually common practice for people to deal out kisses to friends and strangers, along with wishes for a good new year. A tradition which, given current affairs, should probably stay dead. Origins aside, we know that similar kissing traditions pop up at different times and in different cultures throughout Europe. For instance, during the Renaissance in Italy, it became a common custom for those in the upper class to ring in the new year with a masquerade ball, where guests would kiss the first person they saw at midnight, believing that this would purify them for the coming year. German folklore also references the importance of receiving a New Year's Eve kiss, believing that kissing at the stroke of midnight could help to strengthen a budding romance. German immigrants later brought this custom to North America, where it evolved into the New Year's kissing tradition that we know today. Or at least that's what we assume happened, being that the first written reference to a New Year's Eve kiss in North America stems from the 1863 New York Times article, which depicts a German New Year's Eve party where all the guests come together to kiss at the stroke of midnight. Again, not the safest tradition to be observing in 2022. While most countries now celebrate New Year's Day on January 1st, there are still quite a few communities throughout the world that ring in the new year on a different date. Though China officially adopted the Gregorian calendar after the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1911, the importance of secular New Year pales in comparison to the Spring Festival, a 15-day-long celebration that begins with the Chinese Lunar New Year. Occurring in accordance with the Chinese lunar calendar, the start of the Spring Festival coincides with the first new moon that appears between January 21st and February 20th, and ends with the Lantern Festival, which always occurs on a full moon. Historically, the celebration of New Year's in China, or the area now known as China, stretches back to the Western Zhou period, where, according to the Book of Songs, people would give offerings to the gods as thanks for giving blessings during the new year. However, it wasn't until the Han Dynasty that New Year's traditions were first formalized, with additional customs being developed as time went on, right up until the present day. Today, preparation for the Spring Festival generally starts during the last month of the old year and involves cleaning, mainly for the purpose of symbolically cleaning out the remnants of the old year, cooking, and the observance of some minor holidays. Next comes New Year's Eve, on the last day of the 12th lunar month, which is a time to get together with family, honor ancestors, and if you're a child, receive hongbao, red envelopes stuffed with money, which are believed to bring good luck. On New Year's Day, these celebrations tend to be a bit more boisterous, with parades, lion and dragon dances, fireworks, and visits from friends and family. Celebrated in accordance with the Julian calendar, New Year's Eve in the Ukraine, as well as for members of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, is celebrated on January 13th. Though, despite its religious connections, the holiday's traditions are still deeply rooted in paganism. Malonka, the woman for which the holiday is named, is actually the mythological daughter of Mother Earth, who, according to legend, was kidnapped by the evil ruler of Hell, thus banishing spring from the earth until she was rescued. Does this story sound familiar to anyone else? This legend seems to imply that the original purpose of Malonka, like many New Year's celebrations, was to mark the end of the winter solstice and the eventual return of spring. Not unlike secular New Year's, Malonka is also known for its boisterous parties, complete with elaborate costumes, parades, singing, good food, and practical jokes, all of which provide a nice contrast to the more religiously significant holidays like Christmas and Lent. For instance, one Malacca custom is called the Rite of First Furrow, where revelers prank their neighbors by pretending to plow their living room. A bit weird, but I approve of any custom that allows me to mess with people I don't like. I mean, play harmless pranks on my friends and family. Though Malacca was banned during the Soviet occupation of the Ukraine, as the powers that be decided to restyle New Year's as a non-religious alternative to Christmas. Long story. In recent years, the celebration has gone through a revival, which I'm totally in favor of, as any holiday that incorporates gypsies, dancing bears, and pranks deserves to be celebrated. Jewish New Year's, or Rosh Hashanah, is a holiday with deep spiritual significance for members of the Jewish faith. And while I would love to talk about all the different traditions and customs associated with its celebration, my inability to speak Hebrew, combined with my fear of accidentally offending any Jewish people who watch this video, has led me to conclude that this would probably not be the best idea. If I've piqued your interest about Rosh Hashanah and you want to find out more, then I would encourage you to do your own research. I'll be including a couple of sources in the description if you're interested, and no matter where you are or when you celebrate, I hope that you have a Happy New Year.